This is The Righteous View with your hosts, Adia Byers, Deborah Hoskins, and Christina McCormick.
And Douglas, we've got to add you on there.
Hey,
Ah,
wait, take two. Hold on, take two. I'm just playing.
take two.
Yeah, we got to do that. We gotta do
We've got to add you on there for this marriage session because we're going to be on here for quite some time. But welcome to The Righteous View. I am Adia Byers. Our weekly podcast will focus on topics regarding women of all ages. Our mission is to foster righteous, open dialogue on topics that have been taboo within our social communities. We want to cultivate open and healthy discussions between mothers and daughters, husbands and wives, mature women, young women. And our goal is to educate and provide factual information to these demographics concerning our biological, physiological, and spiritual existence. So I'm introducing my beautiful co-host, Christina McCormick, Deborah Hoskins, and our special panelist. We're excited about having her on throughout this marriage topic is Patricia Douglas. Welcome,
Yes,
ladies.
welcome. We want to encourage you to
Thank you.
tune in weekly every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here for thought-provoking topics that will hopefully stimulate conversations and that are sometimes hard or uncomfortable.
Yes, we are live on Facebook at the Hebraic Awakening and the Righteous View. If you missed the podcast, you can view it and past podcasts on our YouTube channels at the Righteous View. If you enjoyed the topics and the discussions have helped you in any way, please remember to subscribe, like, and hit the notification button.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going through this series called So You Say You Want to Get Married. So today's topic is questions you and your to-be spouse should discuss. So before you even after you talk and after you feel that you are this could be the one, there are questions and conversations that you should have. And so we are going to jump right into that today with Christina. Just take it
All
away.
right, so now I know a lot of us probably have not asked any serious health questions about our spouses, and we need to do better. We need to break that mindset that we have within our community. I don't know if other communities do it, but I know I didn't, and I should have. And it is very serious that we talk about health issues because I found out I had the sickle cell traits. So because I didn't know when I had my first child, he had the disease and I did not know what was going on. I had never heard of sickle cell. Back then, it wasn't really talked about. As a matter of fact, when I gave birth and they tested him and they came, the grandmother told me she was looking all scared, and I'm like, why she looking like that? Because she was there, and it was because she knew about the sickle cell disease. And if you know anything about that disease, it is painful. Some of them are in the hospital all the time, monthly. It's hard to live a normal life with some of them. However, the Most High blessed blessed me with Dominique. Now, I didn't know that there were different strands
Wow.
of sickle cell. So it's like you need to know not just that you have sickle cell disease, but need to know the strand of sickle cell that you have. And so back then, They just put me in a room as a young mother, put a videotape on. I'll never forget it. And basically, the video was saying that they only lived to about 5 years old and they
Mhm.
potentially passed away. And I came out, I was like, I was, I'm telling you, I was shocked. And it made me just so nervous with Dominique. However, I learned more and more, and he really didn't get sick young, so he had a different type of strength, thankfully. And I remember even when Dominique went through that brainstem coma, that the doctor was like, listen, he not gonna suffer from sickle cell if you keep him warm and he's hydrated. And he didn't. I could count on both hands throughout up until 10, even beyond that, he has had a serious sickle cell attack. He does not get sick like that, but that's not for everybody. His biological father passed. They lived to about in their 50s, and then they pass on, and he was in and out very, very severe. So it's very important, even with my children. I think 3 out of 5 children have the trait. So I tell them, they don't have any children right now, but you have to talk about it because you don't want that type of problem unnecessarily. And they used to ask me, doctors, I was young, why did you bring this child into the world? Because they really didn't know about it. And I would be like, because I didn't know, I was so uninformed. So the first thing I think that couples should talk about is genotype. Like, I know that's a big one, but you need to talk about it because not just with sickle cell, but say like with the breast cancer gene, you need to you need to talk about it. Genotypes play an important part when you are trying to plan a family. So it's highly important that if you don't know, you get tested. Didn't they used to do that back in the day? Well, before you got married, you had to get tested, and they stopped that because I didn't have to do that.
Yeah, we did.
Absolutely, we
Okay.
did.
Yeah,
We
we
did.
did.
Yeah, because that when we were getting ready to get married, and that was what 46
Mhm.
years ago, when we were getting ready to get married, get our wedding license, we couldn't get our wedding
No problem.
license without having a doctor's having
Blood
a
test. Hmm.
physical and a blood
Hmm.
test because they do want to know if you have any kind of blood disorder, so you can be clear at that. And that's also where you may find out some health issues about yourself, you
And
know, because I found out, well, the doctor told me I had a severe heart murmur. I don't know what happened to it because no other doctor after that confirmed it, but that was something that he was concerned about when
wow.
we got married.
Wow. See, and I knew that. And what was the reason that they stopped the testing?
I never knew why.
I
I just knew that.
I don't know why either, and I thought that was so
I think it has
ridiculous to
something to
stop.
do with um not prejudice. What is it? It's some kind of act.
Privacy, was it HIPAA
Yeah, something.
privacy?
I don't know
Maybe
if it was HIPAA because I don't even think it was. That was even much spoken about back then when they stopped it.
it wasn't. It
No,
wasn't.
I don't.
Uh-uh.
I don't. I can't recall why they stopped it, but I know they did stop it. In the state of New York, they stopped it. Some
Wow.
other states still had it somewhat, but in the state of New
Mhm.
York, they stopped it, and then it was nationwide.
Right. I wish they had kept
Mhm.
that. But I think maybe done on purpose. I don't know. You know how it is here. The sicker you are, the better it is.
Right, right.
I don't know.
Absolutely. I don't know what would be a logical reason
To stop it.
to stop it.
Well, I hope
People find out that they're related.
that's what I was about to say too. Like, did you? Yeah, you found out you were related because like for me, I come from big families. I mean, by myself, me and my brothers, the two living brothers, we had between us. What do we got? 17. I done forgot. We got I count 17 kids between the three of us. And
Wow.
my mom and dad,
Mm.
they have big families on both sides. So that's a lot of cousins whirling around out there. And
Ooh.
I be looking like, man, if we look too much alike, or if we got the same features. I be telling my kids,
Mm.
you gotta. And then let's talk about being a single mother, and you're not with that father, but
Mhm.
they have a whole lineage of other children that they could come up on. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Absolutely.
wild for them to have stopped that. But that's something that we should look at. Blood type. Um, I don't know
Absolutely.
why we just don't talk about this anymore. But you need to know your blood type. It's something I'm like, man, I need to
Yes,
know.
But you know what?
absolutely.
Just so happen you said that in
Mhm.
regards to blood type. A lot of people go to their doctors and a lot of them will not give you blood
That's
type.
right. Yep.
They will not
Blood type.
give you
Yeah,
your
that's
blood
right.
type.
Yep.
And that's the only
That's
time a
true.
lot of times you find out your blood type is if you donate blood.
Yeah.
Right.
And they'll tell you. I had to find out because being a police officer, we had to put our blood type on our you know,
Wow.
so I knew
Uh,
my blood type.
mm,
But a lot of people don't, and they ask, and a lot of doctors they will not
They
give them.
tell
I
you.
don't understand why, because you should know your
Yeah.
blood type.
Mm.
I don't
That is
understand
sick
that either.
because looking at just a little bit, I didn't do a lot of in-depth studying, but say like if you are RH negative and then you marry somebody
Mhm.
RH positive. Now what they're saying is the first pregnancy, you may not have no issues. But if you have
Right.
multiple pregnancies, they said the mama will start developing antibodies against that RH positive child. So these
Child.
certain
Wow.
diseases will come about and it can be fatal if left untreated,
Wow.
right? And as we were talking about giving blood, now I don't think I can give blood, right? So you need to know, like you need to know. But say like an emergency and you need a blood transfusion and you have
Exactly.
a rare, that is so foul that they do not give this
Wow.
information out to us because that's when you find out when you need a blood transfusion. Just like with
If
sickle sellers,
right.
Yeah.
they may need a blood transfusion,
Absolutely.
and then you find it out.
Yeah, I just can't think of a viable reason why they stopped. Because it seemed to me, first of all, if you everyone should know what their blood
Right,
type is. And like me, I think I'm being positive, but I should know for
right,
sure.
right.
You know what I'm saying? You're right. Your doctor doesn't tell you unless you just ask that question. But when you go and have that blood work done, it's something that can be put to you. Oh, your blood type is blah
Right.
blah blah. That's a very very
Yeah, I
important.
go to the doctor
Um,
and they gonna tell me. I pull up. I was a nurse. You gonna tell me what my blood type is, so I can be aware, because that's foul. That is really foul.
really, that is it. Really is. I don't know what the reason could be to um, I don't know, not
Hey,
share
if
that.
anybody out
That's
there, any healthcare professionals, if you know why you can tell, please
yeah. Please let us know.
put in a chat. Send me an email,
Please share with the righteous view.
Please, please.
please.
Wow, because that's just I can't think of a
Yeah,
reason to say, oh, that's not a good idea. Let's not do that
yeah.
anymore.
STIs now. I have been witnessing that there's a lot of people living with herpes. And so, y'all know, you see the commercials, right? And I'm like, why is commercials about herpes
Mhm.
coming on and y'all just
Mhm.
cohabit? And I was like, oh, because a lot of people have herpes.
A lot.
Okay.
Mhm.
And now the medicine, I guess, is geared toward, well, since a lot of people have it, we just gonna make it to where y'all just can, still have sexual relations and not get infected. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. That don't sound right to me. But a lot of people
Hmm.
Hmm.
are doing that. So STIs, listen, and as I was reading this, I was like, see, a lot of us. scared to talk about it, embarrassed to talk about it, but it causes fertility issues. For instance, I believe gonorrhea, like men, don't want to say nothing. Okay, what happens is you leave that
Right.
untreated, you got low sperm count. Then you wondering why your sperm count is low. And a lot of men in their
Correct.
younger years have a lot of sexual partners. They have a lot of STIs that they don't show symptoms. That's why they have it for so long.
Correct.
You
And
can blindness
Correct.
too. Blindness too.
blindness too. See, so if you have gonorrhea forever, just because you may be asymptomatic, then you have a low sperm count, you never got tested, you too scared or embarrassed to even think about getting tested. And in women, it causes pelvic inflammatory disease. So how many of us are
Disease.
going around
Mhm.
with an untreatable STI all because we're too embarrassed go
Right.
and get checked up. You just have to. I mean, you really do. You just have to. You have to let them do it. I don't even if we're married, we just need to let them check it. Let them check.
And I think what happens a lot of times is because a person, if they be incapable,
Yeah. Right.
messing around, then they don't want
Yep.
them to know. And I know cases where people have gotten them where the spouse was
That's
messing
right.
around, have, having an affair, and then the other person they divorce, and the man, because they don't have symptoms, went and was getting ready to marry another young lady and gave it to
Right.
her, and she got pelvic inflammatory disease, and when she got pregnant and lost the baby, and it was just a big thing. He didn't even
Wow.
know, so he had to go back to his ex-wife and say, "Look, you need to go get checked up because I think you gave him something."
Mhm.
Wow.
Because men
Wow.
don't get those
Don't.
symptoms. And the same thing with syphilis. A man can live with syphilis a long time, but if he gets it to a woman will die
Mm-hmm.
from it. So he'll have a whole
Mm-hmm.
string of women having, having this illnesses, and he's just not. Nobody's checking on him. He's not saying anything because he's floating around all over the place.
You know what?
You know,
I'm sorry. I'm thinking because we are 2025, so we just gonna have to talk about it. So one thing that I told my children, I know they like my mom is crazy. Make sure that that's a man, and make sure that that's a woman, because because
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
things have
This is so
changed,
crazy. We got going right here.
and I know it looks like a
So,
duck.
you have to stop and say,
It did. Look, I know they was doing it back then. If it looked like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it still don't mean it's a duck. I know that's what we say.
not anymore. That's what my daddy used to say, but now I have to say, Daddy, that
Wow.
can't say anymore.
So
Wow.
because
Because they be looking quack. They be
quacking,
looking
quack,
quack and
quack, you like, oh
walking.
no, baby, that's not a duck, sweetie. That's not a duck
Wow.
because sex change, actual sex change. They have evolved
Mhm.
to because I teach high
Absolutely.
school. We had a high schooler. He was going through the process, and you could tell that he was being rounded out with hormones. But I could tell that was a boy all day. But he was rounded, he was beginning to round out, like having little hips, and stuff like
Oh.
that. To where one little
Hmm.
boy, I didn't say nothing. He popped. He was like, he was digging on her. I said, what? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it took him a few days, and he stopped coming to that classroom cheesing. I said, that's a little boy.
Oh my goodness.
That's a little boy. But
Better know your
even
place.
watching a TV show, so we have fluid relationships. We have what do they call it? All of the names I forget because it's past bisexual, y'all. It is fluid. People can be um attracted to men only in the daytime. At night, they may want to try a woman. It is fluid, you
Yeah,
know.
I heard about
It's
all of that.
fluid.
I heard about that. That's crazy.
So then you have open relationships that's becoming more popular. So you have married people, even homosexual relationships, they are open. So you have a lot of promiscuity going around here because people are just open and fluid. So you need to ask your partner, I'm serious. If it's a woman and it's a man,
Yeah.
have you ever slept with a man? That's hard to say, but
I
you
mean,
need to know.
right. Have
Do
you
you
ever
do
slept with a
you
man?
do you like men? Do you go back and forth between a woman and a man? You
And some people don't think there's anything wrong with that.
exactly. So
Some people think that's absolutely
fluid,
natural.
yep,
Mm-hmm.
fluid.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: when you're fluid, let me keep
That's
it.
what it's called, fluid.
Let me keep it PG. But that's where a lot of
I,
fluids is exchanged.
I didn't know that's what they call
That's what a lot of fluids is exchanged, y'all. They naming stuff, and I'm practical. I'm like, that's a practical name for what y'all doing. Exchanging fluids back and forth all around,
it.
up and down.
Absolutely.
Okay, while you're talking about
Yeah.
And
think
you
about
want to
that.
know something?
Yeah.
Something too in regards to as you're talking about health issues, but just in regards to as you're talking about, know that it's if it's a man or is it a woman, because with these changes you used to could go by the Adam's apple and just certain things, but all of that they know how to do it where
All
none of that
that
shows. So it's just
Mhm.
right.
like you really don't know. So yeah, you need to ask and be specific.
Right.
So yeah, specific.
Yes.
Don't be
Absolutely.
beating around the bush, and even if someone been
Because
delivered, listen, I still need to know.
Hello.
Um, you need to
absolutely.
know.
That's
I'm
right.
talking about
I
even
need
within
to
the
know
faith,
the
because
whole
people have
story.
been delivered, but
Yes.
you still need to know. No,
Yeah.
and if
Yeah.
you've
You
been
need to
delivered,
know.
you shouldn't have a problem to be
That's
able to talk
right.
about it.
Exactly.
Dealing with it,
So these
right?
things
Because
should
that
be
part of
addressed,
your
but
deliverance.
also things too that I'm hearing about also is that you hear like women will say, well, I'm still a virgin, and but yet they do everything else.
Hmm.
No, you're not a
Mm-hmm.
virgin,
Yeah, we
because if you're
talk
doing
about
all
that.
of
You're
these
not.
all kind of orals and all of that kind of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
these things need to
You
be
just still a
addressed
virgin.
too, because they get
Right.
caught up in these relationships. And even though, and they said, oh well, you're still a virgin, you can do that. No, you can't. And know that it's
Yeah.
still a form of sex, and it's still, you know and I know that we're dealing with those within the faith and out of the faith, but bottom line is you need to know that all of that is still sex. It may not be intercourse, but it's still, you're doing things that you shouldn't. And
Yeah.
Right.
it can
Right.
cause health issues.
Yep. That's what I was about to say. It can
These are
cause
health
health
issues, because
issues.
doing this, all of that kind of other stuff, those are the things that really will get you killed,
Yes. Yes.
and just as you talked about, even herpes, that's a disease that's non-curable.
Right.
That you
Mm-hmm.
cannot never
Correct.
not have it. You will have herpes unless you delivered and the Father heals
Right.
you.
Right.
Can't do. But herpes in itself is something you live with for the rest of your life.
I want y'all to know that as an ex nurse, all the nurses, doctors, healthcare professionals out there, you know, it's sad, but it is true. And that's why I said, okay, people learning to live with these types of illnesses and diseases.
Of
And
diseases.
they're like the statement, Miss Wendy, Sister Wendy, we see you. Fluid, because I was watching a TV show and it was a great TV show, but then, the couple, they were gay, but they were open everywhere they went. They were seeking out another partner everywhere they went. So why are you married? If I don't understand what open means to an extent, but if you seeking out somebody every time, y'all passing stuff on. And so we really need to push, right?
Dangerous.
Push. I'm trying to say it
That's
nicely
dangerous.
because I can just hear the old woman. Keep your legs closed. What they say? Keep your pants
They
up and your dress down. I mean,
spirits, cast
I don't know.
self-proclaimed spirits.
I don't know how else to say it. Because it's getting worse. That's what I'm saying. I told y'all as a nurse taking care of elders, y'all,
Yeah.
the el
Mhm.
and these were rich elders. I worked for a super rich nursing home where they did not take Medicaid. So they did not take any poor people. Those were rich people. But those rich people, honey, would tell me some stuff about their sex life and why they were in there and had some of the conditions that they had, y'all, like not being able to hold your bowels in. And they would tell me, and
Oh,
I'm like,
mhm.
I'm like
Well,
young. I'm like,
all that, all
from
of
that,
that,
from
all
that. Y'all can say what
that.
y'all want to, but I am a nurse. We see a whole lot and hear a whole lot. Like the lady, and I know your service can fall out, but I know what they told me. I was in college and one of the young ladies, I was like 19. I don't even think I was 19 yet. And they was taking that girl out of the dormitory in an ambulance because she liked to have sex rough. And she was bent over and could not stand back up.
Let me stand up.
And she was telling it. And I was like, why would she say, you know what I'm saying? Like, why would she tell people that? So this is stuff that our children are experiencing and they're not saying
And are
anything and they're
exposed to.
exposed to it. I know we in the congregation, we in the church, we in the synagogues and assembly, but it ain't stopping what's going on out there. That's why it has to be an open conversation. And some children, some young adults just don't have households where they can hear this type of stuff because maybe their households is one of them households that's fluid. But you may have a child, even though you come from two dads and you have a child, whatever, but that child may be conservative in their thinking. I don't know why people think because you don't have a
Right.
homosexual relationship that you have a
They
child.
inadequate their
they
parents.
they can be conservative. So you need to let them know,
Right.
you know, that it's okay. And I don't know how those households are ran. I know that I hear that in elementary school. I have two dads, I have two moms. This is what's coming up, y'all. They these kids is just different for what they're seeing, hearing, and experiencing
Very,
with sex. Okay.
very, very
So we
different.
gotta have these conversations as uncomfortable as it sounds. These children gonna have it and they are having it in the schoolhouses. And that's old.
And as as inappropriate
Mhm.
as they sound. So we have learned to make everything
Mhm.
inappropriate, but everybody's doing it.
Right.
But it's all
Right.
inappropriate. Somebody's got to talk about it,
Yeah.
and we've got to understand, because even with the aspect of doing other things but thinking you're still a virgin and you're saving yourself for your husband, but doing these other things. So what if you end up with herpes in your
I was
mouth?
just about to say
See
that.
that?
I just
Those are things that so now you have to share with this man that you have a problem and may have outbreaks within your mouth
Mhm.
because you're doing stuff and you thought, I'm still, you know, um, pure as the driven
Yeah.
snow. No, you're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And somebody's got to be able, you have to be able, but these are hard conversations that you need to have. If you get to a place where now you're looking at each other like, this could possibly be my
Mhm.
wife, this could be my husband. Okay, let's sit down and let's start having, these
Right.
conversations, because it's not fair. It's not fair, and it's not righteous. Nothing right. about going into a relationship with someone and not being absolutely truthful concerning your body and situations. If you have had a problem, a health problem, where you know you can't have children, that man needs to know that.
Mhm.
He needs to know that,
Right.
so that he can make the decision on whether he wants to marry you anyway and just say, baby, you know what, we'll adopt. It's
Mhm.
okay. But
Mhm.
you don't get to hold that and not tell
Right.
him. And then after you get married, you try, and the poor man is thinking, well, at some point, oh, Father, please, just praying. God, you going down the aisle, getting anointed by the prophets and folks speaking over you and everything, and you know you wasn't able to have a child ever,
Right.
and you know that, and everybody anointing you with oil, and your poor husband, look, I'm talking about, look, we've been in ministry.
Woo.
I can't tell you how many years. Seen it all. And then the poor man finds out you
That's
never
true.
could have children. And you knew it before you got married. But you took him through all of that emotional stuff about
Yep.
having children. And you knew all the time that could not, that you were barren, or whatever happened, you
Mhm.
cannot have children. It's not those conversations. We gotta have those conversations.
Mhm.
Health issues is so important, and the generational things, even down to generational curses, generational blessings, generational curses are things that's come down through your bloodline, and the fruit is say a generational curse,
Yeah.
miscarriage. All of
Yep.
the women are in a particular family seem like at some point they just have miscarriages.
Mhm.
Miscarriage on top of miscarriage on top of miscarriage on top of miscarriage on top. That's a
Yeah.
generational. You're dealing with the scripture calls it a running issue, generational curse. It's coming down through your
Generate through the blood.
bloodline. That's something that you got to
And
talk
those,
about.
and just
Look,
as you talked about, the through the generations, that can be also with sugar diabetes,
Yep.
Mhm.
sugar
absolutely.
diabetes, hypertension. It can be generational.
Hypertension, heart
Heart
disease.
disease, generational. Cancer, generational. It's
Right,
under the family. These
absolutely.
things, and even alcoholism.
That's right.
All of these
Mhm.
things can be generational.
Addictions.
That needs to be addressed.
Mhm.
That needs to be brought out because and especially if it's even on both sides, but
Mhm.
both. This is why, as you speak about health issues, always in family history,
Yes.
things that within the family, history, and blood disease. It's still a lot of things that's generational that can be, and
Absolutely.
that needs to be spoken. That as Tina mentioned regarding you know um sickle cell anemia, but there's so many other things that goes through the bloodline
Mhm.
that should be addressed, because
Absolutely.
even if you marry and you have the sugar, these are things that you got to watch your diets. Even if you have children,
Yes.
watch the diet.
Correct.
Mhm.
Certain
Absolutely.
things can be, handled, but you gotta be true, and you gotta be, all of these things need to be brought out. Not that you just don't have children, you have them, but then now you have to watch their diet.
Yep.
Like,
Mhm.
Absolutely.
you just gotta you watch
Absolutely.
their diets. Like Egypt's, just to mention, like her dad, and through on her father's side, sugar diabetes is very, very bad. And actually, I don't even know if Egypt was 6 months, and this is only truly through the Most High. Eileen had took her to the doctor. Her sugar level was over 600. They were about to airlift her to the
Wow.
Wow.
hospital at 6 months, and I called me
Wow.
up, and she was like, they're getting ready to take her. to the neo, to another hospital. And so I said, I'm on my way, and I was praying, and someone came in, and just as true, this is, absolutely. And someone came in and said, can I just test her now? All of that came through the blood work that they did. But then someone, for some reason, this nurse came in there and asked, can they take her blood sugar? And it was, I believe it was 80 something. And then the person said, they was like, that can't be so, because the blood work don't lie and this and that, right? And actually, Egypt was a little despondent. She wasn't like her active as a baby. And so they asked to come in to take it again. And it came. And when I got there, I had her and I prayed, and she started to come alive. And praise beyond that, her blood level was. And so even though she has never had that outburst ever again, and I believe she was healed, but she's still got to be watched.
Yes.
Ever so often. But even now, we don't give her a lot of sugar. You still, you got to still watch their diet.
Or carbohydrates. And that's really important for us to understand, that children start beginning and building, developing those fat, I guess, like fat cells and fat habits when they're young. So if you don't begin to teach them when they're young how they need to govern their eating, how they need to make sure that they're getting enough fruits and vegetables, have a colorful, diet, then because I'm telling you, these some of these mothers and fathers with all of this fast food and these children, I'm like, Father, y'all killing these babies with all of, well, he will only eat chicken nuggets from McDonald's. He's a child. If you wait for me to eat chicken nuggets, all you getting, brother, you in trouble. I don't care nothing about you with no poo-poo lips and how you don't take you somewhere and have you intravenously fed. How about that? They keep doing that every day. The children, they are children.
Yes,
We
sir.
take the stand as the adults.
Yes.
My child will only eat peanut butter crackers.
Right.
I'm like, and you do that?
They do. They do it at school. It's and I know they have allergies and stuff to everything. And that's another thing. Like, children are born with allergies to the world. They can't even enjoy the world because they allergic to everything. And I'm like, man, it's too much, and we need to discuss it, because I believe, just like Prophetess said, she, even if you believe they heal, like Dominique, I believe that, I back then I did. I believe he was here because they said this baby gonna die, and he was as healthy. And we lived. I'm from Chicago, okay. It's cold. I raised up in Indiana.
Wow.
It's cold, and that baby did well. So even with that, even now that he is in his 30s, I'm like, Dominique, you was real healthy. Not that he's suffering from sickle cell, but I could tell there's a hue that they have, like this gray hue, and he's, he has it, but it's because he ain't eating his veggies like I was feeding him. He's not drinking his water. And so even though he's not in the hospital from sickle cell anemia attacks or crisis, you can just tell that he's not at his optimal. And that's what will happen even if you believe you are healed. Like she said, the Most High wants you accountable. Like the women. Right. Well, I'll just get married and I know the Most High gonna bless me with a baby, even though, they say
even though I have no uterus.
And I understand that, but you have to tell people that you don't have uterus.
It's not gonna happen.
You cannot go around not saying that. And then the older women.
I mean, that's not laugh.
And the older women out here,
it's ridiculous. It's
It is.
ridiculous. He is not going to completely rebuild all of those functional parts. Tell the man the
But they
truth.
won't.
Just
They
say,
won't.
I had a surgery. I had a
They won't.
problem
He
when
gonna
I
blame
was
it
a
on the Most
child.
High. He gonna fix it.
Blame it on the Most High. Blame it on because he ain't a good
Right.
prophet. She ain't
He ain't
anointed.
having no
My
faith.
pastor ain't no good. They just lay on hands and don't nothing happen. And you know your whole
Yep.
history. Let's let's be for real.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You
You have
cannot.
to. And then the older women, that's dating now. And I said this to the mental wellness group. I said, y'all better watch it and be asking questions because you're gonna end up dating somebody that want a nurse as they get older because they hiding all their
Mm-hmm.
pills and they hiding their cane and they hiding their stuff until you say I do. Then here come all their pill bottles and here come all their problems, and now you have to take care of them. And that's a running epidemic as the women that are dating like 50 and over. I'll even say 40 and over. Like you're running into men that were very promiscuous and now they want to settle down because they know that they cannot be taken care of. Now, maybe women do the same thing, but I know men, they really want you to take care of them. And that's what's been happening. You have to have these conversations as you are dating because, as we all said, these generational things, chronic illness, tell the truth so that person can know if they want to
Absolutely.
marry you and do forever. Because some people really mean forever. So let them
Forever.
know, hey, I have this chronic illness and we need to discuss it because what is that going to look like
Right.
as we get older, grow older together? Because some people tap out as that illness gets worse. People leave their
That's true.
spouses in the middle of a chronic attack, and I'm like, dang, that is so foul. But it's true
Mm-hmm.
because maybe you did tell them it. Maybe they said, "Oh yeah," but they really didn't mean it. Like these discussions you have to have, and you need to know your partner. Um, some people are not caretakers. They just not. They don't have it in them. And I don't think that makes them a bad person. Some of us have a caretaker spirit. Some people don't. They'll pay for you to get well. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll finance,
True.
but you can't deem them, oh, they're evil because they didn't want to stay with me because, I have sickle cell disease and they don't want to, they cannot take that. And that's their right to know. And you must tell
And
them.
that's their right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And that's going into a marriage, a relationship in truth, in
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
righteousness.
It's true.
Hmm.
A lot of times when I was listening to what everybody was saying, and I was just sitting here like, and the whole time I kept hearing this in my ruach, and that was some people are just thirsty. They really just want a
Yeah.
relationship. They don't care. They're not going to ask the
True.
questions.
Come on.
They're not going to ask the questions that need to be asked about health, about
Come on.
family dynamics, or anything. I was ministering to a young lady probably about 2 or 3 months ago, and they had started out in our wedding class, like coming and getting getting premarital counseling and stuff like that. And she come to me one day and she said, well, we getting ready to get married. And I said, well, you need to wait. Because she said, what do you think? I said, you need to wait. You're not ready yet. You don't
Mhm.
know enough to marry. Well, I heard the Most High, and the Most High told us to get married. You wasn't in the marriage a good year and a half, and now you're saying, well, I found out that he was lying to me about his life and what was going on in his life. He had other children she didn't know about. He had he had a lot of stuff going on. They couldn't even consummate their marriage because he had ED.
Oh,
So she was really in a bad place in her mind. Like, I can't be with somebody that's lying to me all that. I said, and then she looks at me and says, you were
right,
right. I should listen to what you
right.
said. And it made me think about them, and there's countless others that, go into these relationships and don't ask those very important questions. Like,
Mhm.
how do I move from here? But see, that's what premarital counseling does.
That's
It
right.
helps you in that way, because that person that's counseling you is going to ask those questions. Well, have you all spoke about, do you have children? If the man got children and the woman don't have children, can your wife to be, can she discipline your children? These are
Mhm.
conversations that need to be had. But if you happen to, discipline the child and they don't discipline the children, um, you're gonna have a problem. There's a conflict there, because we didn't discuss that. Do we want more children? Do we, just want to stick with the children that we already have? Or
Already have. Right.
you know or do we both that don't have children, do we want to just stick with not having children at all? We don't see
Right.
children in our
Right.
future, in our marriage, because I don't see myself as a
Right.
parent. So it's like, but a lot of people, I kept hearing it over and over, it's a lot of people that is starving for affection. They want someone in their life, especially our older
Yes.
people. The husband
Mhm.
passed or the wife done passed, and they just want someone to share their
Yep.
life with. They want somebody to sit on the porch with and swing in the
Yeah.
chair, or just a glass of tea or a cup of coffee. They looking for someone to be there so that they won't have to spend the rest of their life
Yeah.
alone. So those are different dynamics that we have to deal with, in all of that stuff.
Yes.
So that's just what I wanted to say about it. It's
Yes,
very common,
and
and
that's you
my
went
heart go
in.
out to those people. Yeah.
Yeah, you went into a little bit of what else, Deborah's topic, but I think that is a good segue into that, because it's very, very important. We should not go. It's just not fair to go into a relationship and not be straight up with the
Mm-hmm.
person. That's not fair. Like, I was watching a funny movie. It was a comedy. And it was about a gentleman who meets a young lady. They fall in love, and the young lady, he asks her to marry him. She's like, yes, yes, yes. And then she goes back to her girlfriend and is like, oh, so he's good with the
Mm-hmm.
kids. And I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him. So what the whole movie is about, him adjusting to being a dad just out of the blue, and these kids are teenagers
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
in that stage where you can't hardly, you want to choke them. How
Hmm.
some your own kids you want to choke, and then
Hmm.
and it just goes into that. That's very, very unfair. Those are conversations that we should be having with those with
Yeah.
people, so that they understand that you don't get to
Yeah.
do that. You do
Right.
not do that.
Well, I was done. My segment is done. That was it.
Mhm. Okay, great. Well, let's Deborah, let's go into yours. I was going to go into the portion, but because Patricia brought up
Yeah,
the point
yeah,
about the family dynamics, let's go into
yeah.
that.
What
Um,
does family
and then we'll
dynamics
go
look like?
into the
Yeah. My four and no more children, blended families. Well, and that's what we see a lot today is blended families, because some have been divorced, or some issues where having children out of wedlock on both parts, or either way, there's children when you coming into a relationship. So as since it was been brought out, it should be brought out that especially as we're speaking in regards to women, asking, do you have children? And
Hmm.
and you want truth, because see, people are hiding. Oh, and then not only do you have children, how old are they? And
Hmm.
are
right,
you taking the
right.
responsibility on those children? If there's child support, are you taking care? And that is a
Right.
big dynamic. Find
Oh
out,
yeah.
are you taking care? Because just saying, oh yeah, I got 3 4 kids and I got a good relationship with my kids, are you responsible? Are
Right.
you taking are you
Uh-huh.
taking care of your children? And listen, even to the point, let me see, because if you're going into this marriage, right? And I'm first talking on the woman's part in regards to the man. If you're going in this marriage, you want to know that you're marrying somebody who's responsible and
Right.
if he's a father, because just being a father by name don't mean nothing. But are you taking care of your children? And
Correct.
if marriage is in the picture, and you're talking about marriage, you need to know. I need to know, because if he says, "Yeah, I take care of my kids, I pay all of this," and then you find out he ain't doing none of that.
Yep.
So you need to really, I need proof. Listen, because your
Mhm.
finances is my finances. If we're going in this and you're not paying child support, if you're not taking care of your kids, something that we talked about before, that if I marry you, I marry your kids, because if we're together, they're going to take my money to pay for your kids. Am I
Mm-hmm.
right or wrong?
Yep.
So
That is
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
absolutely.
these things need to be discussed beforehand. And then if you have children, make it known. And not only just making it known about children, because sometimes we leave children out of the equation.
Mhm.
We get all caught up in the lovey-dovey and the kind of thing. And then you get married, and these children don't get along with the parent, with the step parent. I'm saying step because legally it is step.
Yeah.
Oh, my love, you could go into that once all of that love is showing forth. But
Mhm.
in the meantime, in between time, these are stepchildren. Am I right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Right.
you're going, I think you should have a relationship with your spouse, some kind of way, meeting their children, even if they're grown, even if they're on their own. You know,
Right.
you know what kind of relationship you have with your grown kids,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
realize that even though they're grown or whatever, they're still becoming your family,
Yeah.
because it's blended
Mhm.
family. And
Mhm.
we don't want to
Right.
forget, it's a blended family. Just as a woman,
Mhm.
sometimes, like Prophet, as Patricia was saying, in regards to um um thirsty, just wanting relationship, and you leave your children out of
Mhm.
the equation. You get caught up in the relationship, and now this man comes, and now you're together. And if you have children and they don't have a relationship with this person before you marry, and then all of a sudden, now you're all living together, the kids can't stand him.
Right.
They can't. Now you got a ball of confusion, because you think your
That's
marriage
true.
is going to last and all of that. It's going to take a
Nope.
lot of work. The
Sure
things
is.
that has to be brought out in the forefront. I
Mhm.
my husband and I, we're a blended family.
Mhm.
When my husband and I, when we got married, he has one daughter. I have, a son. I'm just talking about
Mhm.
biological,
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
see our kids as our kids.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes. Yeah.
So my stepdaughter, when I first met her, was 13. When we got married, she was 17. And her and my son are 10 years apart. But they had a bond before we got married. Even my husband, before him, actually, what made me love my husband and marry him is because he had a relationship with my son. My
Mhm.
son, the love
Mhm.
that my son had for him, that they had between one another, really allowed me, because I wasn't even looking to get married. truth be told, I wasn't. It wasn't even in my equation. It wasn't at the time. All I wanted to do was serve y'all. But the relationship that my husband and my son, and he was very young, because at the time he was almost 3 years old when I met him. And and he took time, and then he went to a daycare where his daughter went, and so they created a bond. And then and my husband, he would just do things with him. And sometimes I didn't even, they had a relationship. And so the dynamics was just a wonderful. When we got married, me and my stepdaughter, I hate to, my bonus daughter is truly like my own daughter. She's, she's old, she'll soon be, next year she'll be 50, but I love her. My grandkids, it's our family. My son is not, as seems like his step is his son. So our relationship all together is beautiful. We even got additionals, within the dynamics now, and they all get along like they're all siblings. So that's all important, because if you don't have your children have a relationship with the one that you want to spend the rest of your life, just as we said, this is a life thing. It is not until the feeling is gone. Marriage is lifetime.
Yep.
Am I right? They don't always be that, but it's supposed to be lifetime.
Right.
That's what we go in. We don't go in like, oh, if this happened. No, you go in with the expectation of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that life, if I have children, I want my children. I want my children to love you. And then I have to, and then knowing that you're the head of the home, I'm speaking on a woman, then I know my child has to have that respect and see you as that head of the household. Because if it's not like that, I've seen the dynamics where you don't touch my child, and my child, I take care of it, and there's hell.
Yep.
Hell all the way around, because you have already, this not blended. It's still separated. And you're trying to bring it together because you never worked at bringing it together. And that's something that has to be done before the marriage.
Yes.
And truth got to be said. What children, if I have children, I let you know all my children. And as it's been said, if men have children, how many children you have? Are you taking care? Have you taken care of your children? Because then also, if they haven't, and you get married, and these baby mamas, because you're going to deal with baby mamas. Am I right or wrong?
Yep.
Because these children have mothers, and it may not all be the same mother. So if you marrying and I got children, and you doing for mine, and you ain't did for yours, we got hell. It's just, you got baby mamas, you got daddies, all of these things got to be all of these things got to be dealt with, so it can be unity and truly oneness in that marriage.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is wonderful. It going into those relationships, and that's when I thought about, my 4 and no more. Then he needs to know, if you're not interested in having, like Patricia was saying, he needs to know if you don't want to have it.
I meant to bring that up. Yes.
Yeah. So you need to say, I have 2 children. I'm done. I'm not interested in having any more. And then he can make the decision on, I really would like to have, if I get married, I'd like to have another child or more children with that woman. And then you can make an informed whole thing. This is all about making an informed decision. Marriage is hard enough between 2 sensible people who come together to try to build a life together. It's very hard. And as my husband would always say, it's like you have these 2 entities here, 2 different entities, and they are trying to become one. And there's force, there's pressure, there's pushing, so that is hard enough. But to bring in another dynamic that you didn't even discuss, or it pops up like, you come home from the honeymoon and now your mama then dropped off your kids to your house. Your husband don't even know he got a kid. But you came home from the honeymoon. Well, I'm telling you, it happens. I people in my family got married.
Wow.
And they got married.
Ooh.
And got a baby, y'all. He is your son.
Yeah. And that's true, like you said, that you got to discuss, because you both have children, or maybe one do and one don't, if you desire to have more children. And that was something that we did discuss, and we discussed the fact of having more, because I was still in childbearing age, of having more, and we both agree. And we even tried, and even it just didn't, it didn't work out. We even went through, I have to say, we even went through infertility, different things to to try, and it just, we could have went even further, but we just said, if it happened, it happened. If it don't, it ain't meant to be, so in essence, all of these, where you're all both on the same page. And that's more important. That's what's important, that you're both on the same page, whether it worked, whether it happened, but that you're both in agreement of what, your decision. And these are the things that you have to discuss.
Yeah.
And let me say this one thing before we go on to the work part. And if Patricia, if you have something, please do bring that out. But we can sometimes get to a place where we think that the woman is not being submissive if she's has an opinion on that. Uh, yeah, that's no, she's a grown woman and she has the right to say whether you know it's her opinion. So you can move on to someone else and see if you can find someone else. But I know a lot within the Hebrew walk, you'll have a lot. That word submissive gets very twisted to the point where it almost makes a woman it makes it seem like Father Yah doesn't expect for the woman to have an opinion, and that's not even a good marriage. That's not going into a relationship correct. The bottom line is protocol. It's about protocol. The buck stops has to stop somewhere. Somebody has to be in charge and be the final say, and that's all that's what that's about. That the husband is the head of the house. But as you are coming together, talking about being in relationship and becoming a family, her opinion is very important. Or how she feels about something is very important. So don't if that's a red flag, ladies. If the man says you're not being submissive, because I'm telling you, I want 10 kids and you only want 2. You're not being submissive. Come on. Just stop. Let's just stop. Because that's not what Father Yah is calling submission. So let's just not do that. Let's not do that. Because you're both adults and you're going into the relationship together. You can go ahead. Patricia.
I was gonna say, like, when do you discuss these things though? You know what I'm saying? How many dates we got to go on before you find out what kind of person I am, or I find out what kind of person you are? When you say, it's my 4 and no more, what exactly, where exactly are you coming from with it? Are you saying that if I have a parent who has become ill and they need me to take care of them in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And you say, well, you married to me now, they got to take care of themselves. What type of people are you really getting yourself involved with when it comes to things like that? Because our parents are older people. So they may have health issues, something may happen, they may things just happen sometimes with people. So if something like that were to come about, I mean, and I need to go and take care of my mother or my father for a couple of days, are you gonna look at me and say, woman, you ain't going nowhere? Do we have an understanding that when you're saying, because when you said my four and no more, that's the first thing I thought about. Because our parents, like, as I said, we have aunts, uncles, we have grandparents, people that need our assistance. So how do we fix that? What do we do exactly to fix that? I mean, that's a conversation that absolutely is gonna have to be had, because if something happens to one of my family members that I'm close to, I'm absolutely, I'm not going to look at you and say, well, do I have your permission to go? When you see the problem, you see there's an issue, and I have the resources to go and take care of that parent. I'm not going to say to you, but I need your permission to go. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, I'm going to see you in a few days. That's what I'm going to do. So we have to know, there's so many dynamics in trying to because if you have an issue with them taking care of a parent or grandparent, then we got a problem. We got a huge problem, especially if that person is family oriented. I praise the Most High for my husband.
Me too.
I don't care what it is that my family needs, especially my mother and my father. My brothers, my nieces and nephews, grandkids, all of that stuff. We're there together. We're doing it together. We're putting the work in together. It ain't no no, you can't go. This is our scheduled night to have sex. You can't you can't go because of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I said that because my mind just went back to another couple we was ministering to. She told him, said, no, you ain't going over there. You're not going over there because this is our night. This is our night. And you can't go over there. You cannot go over there. You're going to have to. This is date night, or this is, it wasn't that. It was like, people schedule their times of when they want to make love. You know what I'm saying? So it's so much in there. So much stuff in there, y'all.
That's what I'm glad. That's why you have to have the conversation. And that was one of the things when I put that in there, my four and more. That's exactly what I thought about. I'm building this house for me and my family. If something happens to your mother going to a nursing home. You have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a problem. Now, if she want to go to a senior home, I want to go to a senior. I don't want to live with you. That's her decision. But if something jumps off and they need to be cared for, and you want to look at the woman and say, "Oh no, I built this house for you and my and our kids. I ain't your mama to come and stay, or your auntie."
You know what? And that has in our household, because we were caretakers to my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law had Alzheimer's, and we took care of her for 5 years. And she came. She was living here in North Carolina. My husband, he called me though, but the wonderful thing is that we're both family oriented.
Right.
And that's important. Yeah. And that's what I understand, Patricia, when you were saying that. We're both that way. So he called me up and said, I can't leave my mother like this.
Yeah.
So because I said, well, bring her on. Yeah. And she came and she lived with us. And we had, wound up having help, in different things, getting home attendant and different things, but she lived in her household. And the
Mhm.
bottom line, we were her caretakers.
Mhm.
And even though you
Right.
can have siblings and everything else, everybody don't step up. Something that Tina said,
True.
No,
everybody
right.
is not a
That's
caretaker.
true.
You
That's true.
gotta understand that.
right.
You can't get upset with family because everybody ain't
That's
Yeah.
everybody.
it isn't in everybody.
Mm-mm.
So when you
Right.
take that
That's right.
responsibility, you take it. But one thing that I love, thank y'all with my husband, that we handled it together.
Mhm.
All on
Yeah.
me.
Right.
Because sometimes you do, and that
Yeah.
man will, well, you, and so you the one doing everything, and he just comes and do
Mhm.
whatever he wants. But we
Mhm.
took that responsibility together. He would get her up and
Together.
everything. And then when we moved here, my aunt, who was like a second mother, my aunties, one of my aunts took them, and took her in. And she was with us for over 3 years, I believe, 3. And during that time, we worked together. And that's what it's all about, working together. It ain't, oh, that's a woman's job and that's a man's
Right.
job. You work together. And that's what really what makes the bond, where it's not hard on one in particular person. Certain things that
Mhm.
you as a woman dealing with a woman, you just have to, but for the most
You're
part,
gonna
you work together.
Yeah.
But then that's where you have to know who you are marrying. That's why these conversations are
True.
important. Look at how he relates to
Yes.
his mother. Look how he
Yes.
deals with the women
Yes.
in
Yes.
his
Yes.
how he's dealing with the women in his family is how he's
That's
going
right.
to deal
Right.
with you.
Right. That's right. That's
Bottom
right.
line. If he nasty
Mhm.
and cranky and act all
Mhm.
chauvinistic and bullheaded with his mama and his sisters, guess what's getting ready to happen
That's
after
Yep.
the
right.
honeymoon?
That's right. You know, when scripture says, husbands love your wives as a Mashiach loved the assembly, when that scripture
That's what it
says that,
says.
that means you work together.
Mhm.
That woman will be
Absolutely.
submissive to her husband when he loves her as a Mashiach loves the assembly. That's
Love
what,
the assembly.
And then you're submissive
That's
to one another.
Right.
Wasn't that
right.
the scripture says
Absolutely.
that as well?
Yep. We see that.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
he got rehearsals.
You,
But yeah, you know, when I see scriptures like that, it really it helps me to know that or it really just builds a better confidence in me that y'all has given me the man that he chose for
yes.
me. I done been married before. Y'all done heard about my little stories of these busters that I was married to before. But when you married because you burning, that was my first marriage. You married because you burning, you feel like, oh, well, I done got saved, so I want a husband just like me. You in and out. You got a foot in the church and you got a foot outside the church. So you doing all of this crazy stuff, and then you done cried and cried and cried for a husband. And you finally get him, and he a buster. He's no good. He's absolutely no good.
Just like my niece said, he's
Don't
just
want to take care of it. Don't want to be the man of the house. You got to be the woman and the man of the house. Wait a minute. We married. You're supposed to be doing this part, not me. So like I
yes.
said, when there's so many other dynamics too, you think you want to get married.
Yes.
So you think you're ready for
Totally.
marriage. Really?
Right.
Really? So
Right.
in these two, you got these I found out in one of our sessions that we had with a couple, the lady said, well, I make more money than he does, so our accounts are gonna be separate. Because I asked the question, will everything be joined?
Uh-oh.
Is everything gonna be joined
Okay.
together? Like your bank account, your how you discipline your children. Wait a minute, bank account? Well, we didn't talk about that part. We didn't talk about bank accounts being joined together. Hold on, wait a minute. I was like, so you have a problem with your accounts being together? I mean, yeah, I mean, I make 6 figures, so I mean, he's the head of the house, right? Ain't that the way the Bible say it go? oh baby, you gonna have some problems.
She-
You gonna have some problems. Oh, you gonna have some serious problems because you don't want to be obedient.
right.
You don't want to.
Right.
You don't want to share it. So when there's just so many things in that because you gotta be ready
Yeah.
for marriage in so many different aspects of the word marriage. It's so many aspects
Yes.
of that word marriage. So you gotta be
Yes.
ready for all of it, not parts and pieces of it.
That's right.
Mhm.
Them shepherd account,
So
it almost laid me out. Wait a minute. She said,
I'm like, wow,
"Wait my account," and he's looking over at
wow.
us like, "Wait, what do you mean?"
We didn't talk about that.
She said, "We didn't discuss that. We didn't discuss anything about sharing accounts."
We
And
didn't
I
talk
was like, "Oh my,
that. Let me tell you, when you go and you need to be sitting down
yeah,
in these conversations, okay, get your iPad
right,
out, get your whatever you way you
yes,
like to take
Right.
notes. Let's start writing this stuff. Let's start putting these
mm-hmm,
questions down. Just start
Yep.
thinking about them. So that's going to roll us right on into the
mm-hmm.
next topic, which is to work or not to work.
Uh-oh,
That is the
uh-oh,
question. Some husbands truly have an issue with their wife working.
mm-hmm,
So that conversation needs to be had. What some of the thoughts that the three questions that came up in my mind was what are your
mm-hmm,
occupations? That should be the conversation. Start out with that. What are your occupations? How does he or do you feel about a wife working, a working woman? um, Financially, what is your vision? Females need to
mm-hmm,
ask their husband, to be husbands, what financially, what is your vision for our
yeah,
family? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. What, because we say we're 25 now or we're 30 now. So we know in about 30 years, we're looking at
Yeah.
retirement. Um, if one of you is more of the planner or the one that will sit down and have, it's not always the
right,
husband that has that
mm-hmm,
vision of financial fluency through the marriage and into
mm-hmm,
retirement. Sometimes it's the wife that is more is more educated on
mm-hmm,
that level. So that maybe you might even need to go and sit down with a financial planner and both of you sit down with this person and that then the one who is
mm-hmm,
has less financial literacy can come up to the level where the other
mm-hmm,
one is, but that there is a conversation that goes on to say, you know, what are your jobs? Also, if we get married and the husband it has a position in ABC company and gets the opportunity to become CFO in their branch in New York, and you now live in Dallas, Texas. Now you have to make a decision. We're going to make this decision to move the family to this area. What if she is in a position where she's like, I like my job? That's a conversation
it
you need to
sure is.
have.
Mm,
She's a professional. She could be a
yep.
doctor. She could be a lawyer, law firm. She could own her own
Mm-hmm,
business. She could own a chain of restaurants down there and really need to be, her presence need to
Yep.
be there in order to, but then this conversation, what would happen? What would our family look like if something like that occurred? Shucks, it might be where I know families where it was the wife that was making the higher salary because she had the degree. And the husband was like, You just had a babies, and I'm gonna go home and take care of them. It doesn't make him any less
It
a
does not.
man or any less the head
It
of the
does not.
house. And that woman was one of my bosses in New York. And that lady was over like five or six of the salons that was owned up there. She owned that franchise, about five or six of them. She was the
Mhm.
boss. And I said, so what does your husband do? And she said, well, my husband has a job. He does some blah, 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 blah. But a lot of times, when I get home sometime it's 10, 11 o'clock at night. And he is taking off my shoes, giving me a foot rub, handing me a glass of wine, rubbing my shoulders. Honey, how you doing? Guess what? Because sister bringing all the money in that house. You know what? But she said, but when I get home, he's the
Mhm.
boss.
Absolutely.
She said, if he say, go take out the trash, she said, I'll go right in there and get that trash and take it right
Mhm.
on. She said, you know what? I'm the boss everywhere else, everywhere I go. I'm the boss. She said, I don't need to be the boss at
Mhm.
home. You
Right.
the boss. You the boss at home. What you want to eat out of you? I really don't care. Where you want
Yeah.
to go? I don't care. Whatever you want to do. She was like
Yeah.
that with talking to her. You like whatever you like. What food? Whatever
Yeah.
you like. She was like that because of her
Yeah.
position. But that the part that I loved about her talking about that didn't make him any
Mhm.
less the head of the
Mhm.
house. And that was
Yeah.
really beautiful because it didn't matter that she was making
Yeah.
more money. It didn't matter.
You
Didn't
know,
care. And knowing people where he was the home keeper, that the wife was out there diligently working, the children needed were young, he was homeschooling the children. Sometimes we get to a place where some men may have a
Yeah.
problem with that, so that needs to be a
Yeah.
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
just so happy you said that. Um, actually, my son's biological father, we had talked about getting married. Um, prior, when my son was born, but even prior, somewhat to that, as we were talking, when I had first met him, I wasn't making the money that I hadn't became a police officer. For we were both, he started working for the city, but I was working in a less paying job, and I was working for the city. But I say this to say is that when I became a police officer, he kept telling me, you're going to change, you're going to change. And I said, I'm not going to change. Now, prior to me becoming a police officer, because he would, you know, he was a giver. He even taught me how to budget. He taught me a lot of things, how to handle money and everything. He was my best friend. And we talked about things, but he just couldn't handle when I became a police officer. I
Yeah.
didn't change, but he did,
Yeah.
and he couldn't handle it. I mean, he even wound up on drugs. I mean, because I guess he felt he couldn't take care of me, and actually I was telling him, I said, with both of our incomes, we could really do great, but he couldn't handle it. So yeah.
And that's, you know what, that conversation, because men, if they look at it differently, say, like you're saying, you know, as long as you make him feel like he paying the mortgage, he's paying all of those necessary bills that covers the house, I think that would make the man feel, I'm not a man and a man will have to come on, but because I know a personal situation where it's like that. And he stays at home, homeschools the kid. That don't make him, we make sure we say that don't make you less than a man. He bring him home income through another source, but he is at home, most of the time, and he's a manly man. And as long as you pay it, what you need to pay and you're feeling like, because men need to feel like they taken care of. But like you said, in his mind, he didn't see it like that. But if you covering the most of the bills anyway, it doesn't matter. My money that's coming into the house can be for investments, can be for saving, can be for vacations, whatever. So
Right.
I think these conversations are really important because that bruises men's ego from what I've heard. And I'm saying just pay the bills like you was paying it anyway. Just because I may be making more money don't mean you stop paying the bills. Or you gonna pay these bills, you gonna take care of you're gonna take care of this. Um,
You do what makes you right. That
And
makes you feel.
actually,
And I,
he was making, it wasn't that I was even going to be making more. He was making good salary, but it would have been, we would have been more like on an even level. You know what I mean?
uh,
And
uh-huh.
and not that it was like, oh well, I got my own money, I'll have my own. It's the
yeah,
fact that he just feels like I gotta take care, and if you making that money, you're gonna change
yeah,
whether
leave him.
you do it or not. That's already in
Yeah,
there.
It's mine. And you know the thing, my husband never had a problem with that. And he would be like, okay, you want to work? Okay. I mean, he never had a problem with that. And I remember when we were getting ready talking about having Lori, our daughter, and we sat down and talked about it. And I said, I'd like to stay at home. And he said, good, that's fine. He said, you don't want to go to work. He said, I never said, you need to go to work. You need to, because I've heard
yeah,
husbands say
Mhm.
that. Oh, you need to get out here and get a job because we
yeah.
need to. I've known couples where they divide everything.
Wow.
Everything is half and half, like they're
Yeah,
partners, like they have a
yeah,
roommate. That's
yeah,
how they live.
yeah,
The
Mhm.
light bill is divided in half, the gas bill, the mortgage, the car
Mhm.
payment. He pay his car payment, she pay her car payment. They pay. Everything is split up. That's just too much splitting up.
Yeah, it
But
is.
we just thought put our
It
money in, one big,
right,
and it
Mhm.
just makes
right.
sense.
It works.
Feels out of that. That all of that. Did you pay your half of the
It just,
mortgage? I mean, that foolishness. I don't know.
it
But
just works.
and when we had Lori, I went home and didn't go back to work. I took some small after she got a little bit older. I would, go do some little temp jobs, little reception jobs, temp jobs to make a few dollars or whatever. But yeah, he never was like, you have to
Right,
work or you have to stay at
right.
home.
Mhm.
It was always very, he was always very reasonable and very, just what do you
Mhm.
want to do?
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
know?
hope women have more conversations like this because you really need to know that. Because for me, my children are grown, and my husband like work or not work, and I'm like, and then I be feeling guilty, like I ain't even got no little kid, But he wants me to do me. So, like you said, you need to know what type of man you have and what type of
Right,
man
right.
you desire. Because my husband, he is just the type that likes to take care of his family. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Absolutely.
diminish other
Absolutely.
men that may say, "Baby, I need help."
Right,
May have to work for
right.
a year. It doesn't diminish. It's just that that's the type of man he is. Be some cons
Right.
that
Mhm.
come with that women may find obnoxious because he wants to take care of. So he like, I don't care how much you make, I don't care nothing about your money. And some women
That's
may get
right.
offended with that. I don't, but some
Mhm.
women may. So
You,
you need to know.
you know,
I
and
don't get
that's
offended.
very true. I remember my husband's uncle saying, and my husband said this, that his uncle told him, okay, James, she get married. I mean, no matter if she have a job or not, you need to make sure that you can pay everything and take care of that house. Because women go
Right.
home. Women go home. They get pregnant.
Yep.
They have issues. They go. Sometimes they get sick and tired of putting up with foolishness with
Mhm.
people, and it's easier to go home and take care of your
Yeah.
family, So he said, so don't depend. He told James told me that he said, you should not depend on your wife's salary to be able to, you should be able to take care of your
Yeah.
family. And he has always, has been able to do that, So but we always work
Right.
together. We always work together. I mean, because I always worked. The only time I didn't was those about 3 or 4 years that when we had Lori, but and then when he started the dental laboratory, he opened a dental laboratory and it was in our home and we worked there together. Um, but he was never like either one of those
Yeah.
ways
Yeah.
where if my wife makes more money than me,
Mm-hmm.
problem. He's never like that because he just viewed it as it's the household.
Right.
I have a
Exactly.
niece.
Exactly.
It's more.
I have a niece. She
What does it mean?
she passed now, but her and her husband before they were married well over 30 years. Anyway, they never had any children, but her husband, he was a professional and he worked many years, over 20 years or better. He was working and she really didn't work. She could do whatever pretty much she wanted. So she did wind up going to school and she became a respiratory therapist. And then she then now had a profession and she started working and she was doing really good. They lived in New Orleans. They lived in Louisiana. And
Mhm.
and something that he always loved was precision, something dealing with cars, race cars or whatever, just like a hobby. So apparently, and some people had got a little upset because then she began working full time for the most part, which it was something she loved to do. And then he stopped working and he just started doing his hobby with cars, something with cars where he wasn't really making a salary where she was paying. But this was what they both agreed to do. And
Part.
that's what they wanted.
That
And I
part.
heard people like, well, why he don't work and she's paying all. That's between that
Mind your
husband and that
business.
wife. And I said, all the many years he
Mind your business.
worked, she
That's
wanted him to
Mhm.
have a chance to do what he wanted to do.
right.
And where she worked and loved what she was doing. And it didn't bother
Mhm.
her handling. They had a home, they had,
Right.
you know, like I said, their children were dogs. They had dogs. But anyway, that was what they
You
did,
know,
and people seem to have issues with. I thought it was, listen, she was,
yeah, but people you can't
listen,
worry
well,
about what
she's spoiled, listen, that, and so I say that to
you
bring
know.
in that dynamic as well, is between that
Absolutely.
couple, how
That,
they
Mhm.
that
make the decisions. Nobody has no business in your marriage.
Right.
say anything about that. And I was going to bring that point up. Thank you for bringing that out because I know a couple in North Carolina, and she is a PhD and had a really good position. And her husband was like taking a course in carpentry and plumbing, like he wanted to build houses. So he started going taking his buddies from his classes and buying wood and buying stuff and built their
Wow.
house while she, her salary was coming in and making it. He was doing some stuff on the side like working at Home Depot or something like that, but Buddy built a house and put his wife up in there.
Wow.
I'm like, you better
Mhm.
do
No, that's right.
That's the stuff right
that
there.
and did it at a
Right.
fraction
Hello.
of because
Mm.
he built it himself, him
Yes,
and his
sir.
buddies. I'm like, I ain't nobody
That's
mad
right.
at you. And
Mm-mm.
and I don't know if anybody was saying, well, you need to get a real job. He working at
Mm.
your husband work at Home Depot and you a PhD. Mind your business.
Business.
That's what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
So
and
works for my house,
That's
don't work
right.
for yours. So
it's Exactly.
Keep
And
it
that's
moving. Keep it moving. Yeah.
you have to, there's so many dynamics, so
Mm-hmm.
many variables, especially when
Mm-hmm.
you talk about finances, talking about working. You may have a person, it may be a scenario where you have a person who has a professional position and another person who has a professional position, but they work
Yep.
remote.
Yeah.
I have my nail tech. She has a salon, and now she's getting ready to buy another salon in Accra. And her fiance, he is works remote. But guess what? He worked remote, and little buddy, he be making some money because he be financing the salons.
Right.
So guess what? I'm not
Right.
mad at
Right.
you
Mm-hmm.
because you have your dynamic of your family. So pretty much they can live anywhere one of her
Yeah.
salons is
Right.
because he's remote anyway. So when people start talking, I remember when I went home to have Lori and I didn't go back to work. And I remember I went to church and somebody in the church said to me, "Oh, it's time to go back to work now." I said, "No, we decided I'm going to stay at home."
Right. Right.
And she was like, "No, it's time for you to go back to work." I'm like, "Yeah, you don't."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
"My mom and daddy don't tell us
Right.
what to do." So
Okay.
listen to you. We're good and grown. We're making decisions at that house.
Listen.
You know what? But people will say it and think they have the
They do.
right to speak into your house. And that's not correct. And it's not correct for a shepherd, pastor, bishop, leader of assembly, or anything. We are there to give you pointers and suggestions and to help cultivate and to
Yeah.
nurture a
Yeah.
healthy relationship and a healthy marriage and home. We are
Right.
not there to dictate what you
Mm-hmm.
should or should not do in your house with your husband or your wife. That is not correct.
We have some
Mm-hmm.
comments on the
Mm.
a couple of comments, a few comments.
You can read it, Prof.
All right.
Can I
Well,
peek?
some was all the way down, but one was
Oh,
saying it's sad. I think that was Diane who was talking about children, eating only
oh,
potato chips. I think that was then, yeah, potato
I've
chips.
heard
And then I believe Wendy, I think you had brought up regarding Wendy with the fluids. So
mhm.
and she was saying sad, but here we have Hadassah. She was saying
yeah.
having the ongoing discussion creates the space to design the marriage life they mutually desire, which is absolutely true. Further, it's important couples discuss their values and relationship beliefs throughout the marriage, and
Absolutely.
that's absolutely, yeah, very important. Thank you, Dasta. Very important.
Conversations, absolutely, they have to be had before you don on that white
Yep.
dress and walk down that
Yep.
aisle, or whatever way y'all are getting married, go into before the magistrate or before the whoever, whatever is happening. Those conversations need to be had because it shouldn't be a knee jerk when
Mm-hmm.
now you're married, and then he looks at you and says, "Yeah, you get ready to quit your job. No wife of mine gonna work. Wait a minute. Wait a minute." Wait a minute, sir. Because the conversation has to be, and it's the thing with your professional, or if you love your job, if you are what they call them, a brutista, if you making coffee at Starbucks and you love your job, making that, okay,
Yeah.
you should be able to say, "Look, honey, like my little job. You know what I'm saying? That's, you gotta have the conversation. And you have to be okay, women. You have to be okay with getting up from the table and saying, "This is it doesn't
That's right.
this will be a good match because
Right.
you want me to stay at
Yes.
home and I'm really not interested in doing that,
Mhm.
or you want to have children right away and I don't want to have children right away, or you want to have children and I can't have children."
Mhm.
So what just you have to be ready to get up and leave that dinner
Yep.
table
Yeah.
wherever you are in that restaurant, talking these things through, or wherever you decide to meet to talk those things through. You have to be able to and willing to say this is not going to work. Yeah.
I mean,
And
even though marriage, we compromise in marriage. We all do
absolutely,
that. But
absolutely,
that is not something you compromise. You cannot compromise the fact that you want to have children. You can't compromise the fact that your soon-to-be husband or wife does not desire
Right.
to have children.
children.
There's no compromise in that. So yes,
No.
I absolutely agree. You have to be the big girl, put your big girl jaws on, and say, you know what? Love
Absolutely.
you,
On the big girl.
but this ain't gonna work because our values are different. You see life one way and I'm seeing it another way, and they're not gonna come together and we're not gonna become one. So I mean, we can still be
Right.
friends. Let's be
Right.
friends. But we can't go anywhere further than this because I desire to have those things in my life,
Right.
and because I desire it, then especially children and things like that, and knowing your own worth. When you know your own worth, you can't allow someone to coerce you into compromising something that is near and dear to
Yes.
your heart. You
Absolutely.
can't do that. Don't
Absolutely.
put yourself through that. Your marriage will not last.
It
You
won't.
will eat away at you like a spiritual cancer. You will not be able to have a successful marriage or life like that. It just won't.
Absolutely. And you
Won't.
gotta be true and honest to
Yeah.
yourself. I
Yeah.
remember when my husband and I were talking about having children, and he said he wanted to have a band.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "You're probably gonna need to marry somebody else."
Wow.
I said, "Maybe I'll have four." I started out with four. I said, I could maybe have four. And he said, "Oh, okay. Okay, well, I could work with that." And then we had Calvin. And it was like, yeah, four is probably not gonna happen either.
That's too funny. A band.
You have to,
He
you want
needs a keyboard player. He got a keyboard player, the bass drum, the drummer. He got the lead, and he got the bass.
I don't know if I can do that. I don't know
And
if
you
I can
gotta have somebody to sing.
Right.
oh, ooh, Father. I was just thinking about
We got another Hadassah put up something else, which is, but this is once in the marriage, and I think we've all, well, I know,
people switch.
yeah, we both, have no situations like this where it says people
Yeah.
change and switch it up in the marriage. They are couples in the faith that started in a monogamous relationship, and someone decides he wants multiple wives.
Well, that's a topic for that we have already
Yeah,
prepared.
we did do that. We sure did.
That topic.
We did go into that topic before.
We will go into that topic. So right now we are going to go into our last subtopic. Where do we live?
Uh-oh.
Is location important?
Oh. Yeah.
Where do you live?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Mm.
Sometimes people don't want to, like, I don't want, let's just take it from this level. I don't want to be live in an apartment. I don't want to live in this state. I don't want to I don't want to live a in a multiple wife
Right.
situation.
Right.
you know,
Right.
I think sometimes, and the bros, they get on my nerves so bad. Like, you ain't satisfied with one woman. But I'm trying not to go there because
Amen.
Yeah, don't go there yet. Don't go there.
I'm trying not to go there. But to me, I feel like
How many wives you want?
the Bible says despise not small beginnings, right? So in going into a marriage and knowing exactly what it is that you want to do, like you said before, we've been saying the whole time, these are conversations that we must have. I
Right.
don't want to live in a condo. I don't want to live in a one bedroom house. I want to live in a mansion. I want to live in a huge house. I want to live in this particular city. Let's move to California. It's like there's no planning in what it is that you're trying to do. So when you don't have in your mind or in your heart that these are conversations that we need to have as a husband and wife, we got to get to a place where we're not afraid to say what it is we want.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I need to tell you exactly what I want, and I'm not going to be afraid to say what I want because
Mhm.
I got to stand up in my own truth every day. Hey, at the end of the day, stand in your own truth. Stand in your truth. Do not be coerced into something that you know in your heart you don't want.
You don't
Only
want.
because you want to get married. Some
Right.
people are in love with just wanting to be married. You in
Married.
love with being
Right.
in love with being married
Right.
instead of looking at it like
Right.
this is a life thing. Prophet Deborah said, this is life. You marry for life. You don't marry because you're
Right.
burning. You
Yeah.
don't marry because you feel like, oh, this person's nice. They a nice little arm piece to me, nice little eye candy. Let me marry this person. When they knocking you upside your head
Right.
every chance they get.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
So it's like you got to stand in your own truth. So for me, if I'm looking at, I may not want, going to the justice of the peace. I
Right.
want to go through the premarital counseling. I want to be married in an assembly. I
Uh-huh.
want to have a huge big wedding. Well,
Right.
my fiance may not want a big wedding. He may not have a big family. So
Right.
is he gonna compromise with me because he loves me, or is he gonna stand in his truth and say, "Listen, we can't afford all of
Right.
that. So you need to make up your mind what you want to do."
Right. Yeah.
So for me, with the where do I want to live and all of that,
Okay.
I guess I can only say is I need to stand in my own truth and tell the truth about what it is that I want to do. And hopefully my vision of what I see for myself, my vision board would be able to collaborate with his vision board, and we can be on one accord
Mhm.
about what we want to do, where we want to live, what state, what city, you know,
Exactly.
how we want to fix up our home. Do I want a front porch? Do I want a balcony? Do I want, there's so many different aspects to, what it is that we want to do once we get married and how we want to our home to be set up. You know,
There you
what do
go.
you want? How you want the home to be set up in a way of when people, because I know people right now, when you walk in their house, you got to take your shoes off, and they have old mismatched socks at the door where you can put your socks on, put on a pair of those socks,
Yeah.
and walk through
Yeah.
their house. They won't let you walk in their house with
Yeah.
shoes on. That's their house. That's their preference. If you want to come into their home, then that's what their
Right.
rules are. You know what I'm saying? So those are I would say something else, but I won't. What? I better not say that part. I'll stop right
But
there.
you know what? When me and my when I got married, now I remember my husband, okay, because I was living in Gary, Indiana. For anybody that know Gary, Indiana, I don't have to explain it to you. And
I know the
Yeah,
song.
Right, right. All I know is the Jackson 5 is from there, right?
it's Gary,
No, I've been through it.
That's
I've
true.
been through it. I've been through Gary.
okay,
It's a pretty,
it's pretty rough.
it's truly the
It's
hood.
the capital of all hoods, right?
Yeah, the hood.
The hood, but I remember that I was trying to get out of there. So I had went to Florida, came back, and right before y'all, I really am a flower child. I was like, I'm gonna go to Canada. Like nobody knew that. I don't know my family would have been like, you took them kids to Canada. No, I really was trying to get out of there. But I was in church as well. So when I met my husband, we got married. Now we didn't discuss that. I guess he was just like, "Oh, you coming up out of here," and he was saying, "We moving," and I was like, "No, but God didn't tell me to move just yet. I'm waiting on the Lord," and he was like,
The Lord has spoken.
he was like, "I am not living here. You are not living here." He was like, "I don't know how you survived here for so long." He could not figure out what I was doing in Gary, Indiana. Why was I there and why was I praying about leaving? I mean, when my husband met me, it was like, what have you done? Like he knew I had took a wrong turn in life. And he was like, by the time,
He's like, you stand down like a sore thumb.
yeah, sticking out like I really did, me and my children. And I remember I was trying. I was like, no, let's move over here. And I was trying to move to different parts, right? So get out of Gary, you go to the suburb. He finally he was like, we're leaving, and we were supposed to go to Florida. We made a compromise. We ended up in North Carolina, but I knew that I should have listened to my husband. Like the life that I wanted and the person that I am, it was not going to work in that city. No matter how much you pray, no matter how much you go to church, and all your little church friends just as crazy as you because they stay in the no jobs, education is crazy, and you want to stay there waiting on God. Now, the people of faith got to stop that because the Most High, I'm gonna be like, I never told that child she ended up there because of her fast ways and ended up in this city. Nobody told her, but you sometimes if you a person like me, very high highly religious, spiritual religious, and you waiting on God, I'm so thankful that the Most High sent me a grounded person to say, come down to planet Earth and take a look around you. This is not going to work, and you know it's not going to work. And and I was like, my husband is not finna put up with my mess. I knew what type of husband I had. He obliged. I think we stayed there a year after marriage. He obliged me for a year. And he was like, we're leaving. We are leaving. And you have to know that if you are the one that don't really have a vision, maybe you don't know what you want. Maybe you haven't thought about that, then the person that you're marrying, you need to sit and listen to what they have to say. And I'm so glad that I did because we got here in North Carolina and now the children are grown and we like, well, we could go to Florida. But we really like North Carolina. It opened up to us and I was able to see and live in a way that I couldn't live over there in Gary. So if you don't know what you want, discuss that too. Just be honest and say, well, stop blaming it on God, stop blaming it on Most High, stop blaming it on the prophetic word, and really sit and think about what you want. And if you don't know what you want, listen to your spouse or your soon-to-be spouse to see what their ideas are, and maybe it can align. Because I promise you, I would have still been in Indiana waiting on the Lord to send me a prophetic word to leave.
Wow.
Well, maybe
That's wild.
maybe the Lord would have told you though.
I'm hoping
Me
so.
too. Me too.
You may not still been there. I believe the Lord. I believe the Lord.
That's one of those things. That's one of those things. Like when somebody walked up to me one time and said, "You're not from around here." You think?
Yes. People told me that, like, you took a wrong turn. Yeah.
People don't walk around. People don't
Like
walk around here with heels, with 5-inch heels on. You're not from around here. No.
Mindset. You know how many people had told me that, like, you took a wrong turn in life, just the way I would be and act. But I come from a middle class family. What was I doing in Gary, Indiana? I don't come from that. I just don't. I went on vacations as a child. I had my own room. I had clothes. I had everything. I was the only girl. So what are you doing here? You look like a you.
Listen, Tina, you was that prodigal child that came.
Yeah, I was. My mama knew I was. I was. I really was.
That's out of place. I'm telling you, people probably looking at you like, what is her story?
Smart as a whip, going into the welfare office. You know how they make you take the test. Back then they did. They stopped doing that now. And he was like, "You done?" I said, "Yeah, the test was easy." And he was looking at me like, "You don't even need to be. What are you doing? What are you doing?" I remember trying to go out to have a good time, and I didn't know about that. I was a suburban girl. And a police officer came. He said, You was never supposed to be here. Go home. What are you doing here?" He signaled me out of everybody. "What are you doing here? You don't belong here." It was the Most High had been telling me, "Get out," but you just get out.
I'm telling you, can always see that you stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I moved to High Point, I had a speech problem because I was from the sticks for real. Yeah, I grew up on a farm. We talked like this. We couldn't say rice. We said rice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rice.
When I was in college, my professor told me, he said, "I don't want to be offensive to you, Patricia." He said, "But I believe that you should take a speech therapy class." And I was thinking, what's wrong with my speech? What do you mean?
What
He pulled me to the side after class one day and told me that. And he was like, "Because no one can understand what you're saying."
Wow. Dang.
Oh my goodness. I could not say rice. I would say rice. Rice. Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid. I couldn't say Kool-Aid. I would say Kool-Aid or but that word rice, that was the main one. Oh my goodness.
That reminds me of, and we're gonna get ready to close out, but that reminds me of when we first moved to North Carolina from New Jersey, and the kids would say, "You talk like a Puerto Rican." I said, "You ain't even Puerto Rican."
Probably.
What Puerto Rican?
I was told people would tell me, I love your accent. I said, "I don't have an accent. You all have the accent." When I would work with the kids, they said, Miss D, say something. We want to hear you.
That's what they used to say to us. And then I had an English teacher who did a spelling test, and one of the words she said, ball. And so I wrote down, and I'm thinking, I'm like in the 6th grade, 7th grade. I'm like, why is this not one of our spelling words? So I wrote it down, B-A-L-L. I get the test back, and she says, It's marked wrong. And I'm like, now, wait a minute. I mean, now, a third grader, a second grader knows that ball is spelled Ball. And so I took it up to her and I said, Miss Taylor, this is, you marked this word wrong. That's ball. You said ball. She looked at me, not ball, ball. Like a ball, what?
Like what? Whoa, what?
And me and my little smart aleck self, me and my little smart aleck self, 12 years old. You don't ball it. You boy.
Boy, that was one of my words.
Parker. She said, go to hell.
Pour that water. Pour that water.
She called me a smart aleck Yankee.
Yeah.
I said, well, we won the war. There was a civil war. There was a civil war and we won.
Oh no. You really wasn't like
No.
Oh my goodness.
They would call me a smart aleck Yankee. And I'm 12 years old. I'm like, you don't know how to talk. I went home. I said, well, I don't understand. What did she say? And she's an English teacher. Ball. Like a ball water. Please. Ball and water and such. I didn't.
Now me, I probably would have understood what she said.
You probably would have.
I probably would have
oh, what I used to tell, because David is from down here. You know, he was born in South Carolina.
Okay.
Certain words he would say. Yeah. And I said, David, say road. He said, leave me alone. He said, road.
Road. They went down the road. We don't say road. 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 Well, I got cousins that say went down the road.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's bad. Our speech is something else. You know, knowing where you come from, your speech can be, I'm telling you, it can be something else. People don't understand what you're saying. It could, yeah. It's cool.
Absolutely. And the thing of it is, that's another thing. You know, how, you know, because if you marry somebody who is really, that's a dialect that you can't even hardly understand, remember that they're going to be one of the adults in the house, and the children could really take after, you know, how they are pronouncing
you want to know
things.
something which is so funny to me? One of my girlfriend, she lives in New York, and she's originally from Baltimore, but you know, she has a, you know, northern. Her husband is Jamaican, but mind you, he's been here in the United States. They've been married over 40 years. Over 40 years, but I think, you know, he's gotten a little better. But he's the sweetest as pie and awesome cook. And he has the most beautifulest smile. So when I go, I say, hey, Mr. Buck. He said, hey, Sister Debbie. Sister Debbie, how you doing? And then he goes on into this talk. And I'll be like, yeah, Mr.
You don't know what he's saying.
I said, Frida, do you know what? She said, I don't know. You're married to the man and you don't even understand him. I get now you do. But I thought that was so funny. But all I know is, you know, now I understand him. But he would say, hey, Sister Debbie. He just like, yeah, Mr. Buck. Yeah, how you doing?
So location where we live.
It's so funny.
If it matters to you, then it needs to be truthful with it and say, I do not want to live in an apartment. Right. If we live in an apartment, I only want to live in there for a year. Right. I remember our son, when Calvin and Shamika got married. And Shamika was like, Calvin James is being mean to me. And I said, well, what in the world? What did he do? He won't let me decorate. And Calvin was like, no, we ain't staying in this apartment but a year. We stay in this apartment 1 year and we're buying a house. Well, I ain't about to put all my money in no apartment, no rent. I'm telling you, they were of that apartment in a year, but he didn't. I was like, Calvin, you gotta let her
Yeah.
hang pictures. Come on. You can't just
Too much to do
she
when
can
we
hang a
move.
picture. He was like, no, I don't want you putting
Yeah.
nothing up. Nothing up.
Don't get comfortable in this place. We won't be here long. We
Wow.
won't be here long. There ain't no pictures on the wall. We ain't gotta take pictures down. Don't put
No
nothing nowhere.
nothing. Don't decorate nothing.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. So those conversations.
Mhm.
So I guess anybody have anything else? I guess we can go ahead and really
Okay.
close out and
All righty. Okay, all right.
all
I can
right.
close out. I can close out. Okay, y'all. Our email again is the righteous view 01 at gmail.com. And while we're talking about marriage, please reach out to us. Put y'all on the spot. But I know that our lovely co-hosts can really, really help you, especially if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't have a community to ask these questions and to get a very sincere and mature, well rounded answer. Please email your questions like those to the righteous view 01 at gmail.com. Please send in topics that you feel will be beneficial. If you have a degree or special training in a specific area related to women's health, and you would like to be a special guest, please email your bio and we will review it and reply as soon as we can.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Mhm.
If you have enjoyed the podcast so far, I hope you did because I had a blast.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, moving right along. If you have enjoyed the podcast so far, please, please tune in and tell a friend. Next session will be May 22nd. We will continue in this discussion concerning marriage. Deal breaker, what should they be?
Ooh,
And should
ooh,
they be absolute?
Ooh.
wow.
Deal breakers. I'm going to say that again. Deal breakers. What should they be?
Mm,
And should they be absolute?
wow. Okay.
If you put a comment in the chat that we didn't address, please email us and we will reply as soon as we can. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to ask our lovely co-host, our guest co-host, if she has anything that she wants to say, closing us out before I end.
I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed this. Um, it is important if you are planning to get married to have these very, very important topics going on in your conversation and getting to know one another. And, like I said before, we have ministered to so many couples that are really going through it right now. Hasatan is really attacking marriages, y'all. And we have to stay prayed up, fasted up, and ready to be of service to the Most High's people as leaders.
Yes.
So I would say to those that are listening who are thinking about getting married or who are already in or who are about to walk down the aisle and do all of that good stuff, please know that the topics that we've discussed this week and last week or the other week about marriage, make sure you bring those things up. Because it's important for each of you to know the truth about how the other one is feeling about these topics. They're very, 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 very important if you want to have a successful marriage and if you want to have a beautiful life together. Two people coming together, joining their lives together. You have to be on one accord with these topics and discuss those things and be honest about how you feel. Tell each other the truth.
Absolutely.
I tell Seventh Day all the time, until thine own self be true. Don't lie to you. Do not lie to
Absolutely.
yourself to make it look good or feel good or sound good. Tell yourself the truth. So truly, I enjoyed
That's right.
myself. I love you, ladies. You know I do. I do. I do. I do. Love you so much. And I appreciate you all inviting me on. I really enjoyed myself. Thank you again.
We love you, Prophet.
We want to be
Yes.
we love you, our sister. I'm going to be so excited to see y'all the end of July. Well, in August will be the August and September. I'm excited.
Yes.
Yes.
Love on you for real.
So we gotta
For
get
real.
together. We gotta get
Yes,
together.
you
All of
did.
us get together.
I have a
Absolutely.
busy schedule. You didn't have time for me when you.
Uh-oh.
Hello.
I'm getting on her right now. She didn't have time for me, y'all.
Me either.
No, you know what happened? So CC, Minister CC was like, Prophetess, you better get over there. You better get with Gladys. They getting ready to leave. And she was like, oh, okay. When is she? She told me the next time she talked to you, she was like, child, they going back to Africa. But this time, we're not gonna let that happen this time.
We gotta go back to our spot.
Happen. Absolutely.
Well, we gotta listen, Tina. We gotta find out what the spot is.
I know, right? I'll go crash it.
It's called Cat and Chew in Archdale.
Okay.
That's right.
It's a beautiful place. It's really, really nice. Really, really nice. Right up the street
sounds like a
from
plan.
our
Sounds like a
assembly.
plan.
Yep. We gotta do it.
Good dessert. Yum, yum. We want to just thank all of our viewers. Thank you for tuning in. And we look forward to another edition of The Righteous View. Everyone have a great evening and a great rest of the week. Blessings.
Blessings.
I love you.